It was just another night in the city when the invitation arrived. A black envelope with silver lettering, written in an elegant script that seemed old-fashioned. Inside was a card, a bit yellowed at the edges but somehow luxurious. "You are cordially invited," it read, "to the Masquerade of Eternal Faces." There was no location, just a date and a time. Midnight on the next full moon. At first I laughed it off. It had to be some joke or marketing gimmick. But that night I couldn't shake the curiosity. The thought of a masquerade sounded surreal, like something out of a gothic novel. The next morning I called a few friends. Unsurprisingly, they'd all received invitations too. We joked about it, guessing it was some eccentric rich person's party, and agreed to check it out together. The night arrived and we donned our best masquerade outfits. I wore a dark suit and a sleek mask that I had hastily bought, its black and silver details spiraling around the eye holes. When we reached the spot listed on the card, an old, abandoned mansion on the edge of town, I felt a chill run down my spine. The building was in disrepair, windows darkened, ivy crawling up the cracked walls. But the grand double doors were open, candles lining the floor inside. A masked doorman, face concealed by a mask that seemed almost alive with strange carvings, ushered us in. Inside, the mansion was stunning, as though frozen in time. Candlelight flickered over silk curtains and gleaming chandeliers. Other guests were scattered around, all masked, their costumes blending into the dim, candlelit ambience. The air was filled with a haunting melody from a string quartet playing in a shadowed corner. "Welcome, guests," came a voice over the murmur of the crowd. The voice was rich, deep, and oddly compelling. A man stood at the top of the grand staircase, dressed in a fine suit with a mask that covered half his face, its intricate details glinting in the candlelight. "Tonight, you join the Masquerade of Eternal Faces. Tonight, we celebrate the art of the mask, the magic of transformation." The crowd clapped, the sound echoing hauntingly through the hall. Everything felt wrong, but I couldn't shake a growing curiosity and excitement. My friends and I mingled with the guests, occasionally trying to talk, though most of the others only exchanged brief words and nods. Their masks were strangely captivating, some plain, some ornate, but each one seemed to bear a life of its own, as though the design shifted if you looked too closely. It was subtle, but after a few glances, I realized that many of these masks were not like ours. They had eyes that gleamed as though they weren't really carved, and mouths that seemed ready to move. At one point we lost each other. I looked around for my friends, but the crowd grew thicker, almost oppressive, and I realized I was surrounded by strangers, all pressing closer, their masks watching me. The room felt hot and stifling, the dim candlelight casting warped shadows on the walls. And then, at the center of the grand hall, the host reappeared, raising his arms. "It is time," he announced, his voice low and full of a dark amusement. "Masks, reveal yourselves." I thought it was a theatrical cue that people would pull off their masks for a laugh. But the room filled with an awful, stretching sound, flesh, bone, and fabric intertwining. People's faces contorted under their masks, which seemed to meld into their skin, twisting and pulling as if coming to life. Horrified, I watched as masks fused to faces, their once beautiful designs warping into grotesque expressions. Some masks formed permanent smiles, while others locked eyes in endless terror, each guest left frozen in some unnatural state. Panicking, I felt the edges of my own mask, which was strangely warm. I tried to tear it off, but it clung to my skin like a second face. I felt it tighten, pulling against my skin as if it wanted to merge. The more I struggled, the more it seemed to sink in. I looked around and saw my friends, their masks shifting as well, terror filling their eyes as they realized what was happening. But there was no escape. A woman nearby let out a scream, her voice choking off as her mask warped her mouth into a permanent, wide-eyed grin. Her eyes gleamed with tears, locked forever in a silent scream. The host's laughter echoed around us. "Do you see now?" he asked, his voice reverberating with a cruel, ancient joy. "You have been chosen to join us, to become part of the masquerade forever. This is your new face, the true face of your soul." At that moment I understood. The masks weren't just decorations. They were ancient, cursed artifacts that bonded with their wearers, revealing their deepest fears, their hidden sins, their darkest selves. They were twisted reflections of who we truly were. One by one, the other guests stopped struggling, their masks now fully fused to their faces, their bodies moving in a strange, puppet-like dance as if under some dark spell. I looked at my friends, our faces now partially transformed, and saw in their eyes the same horror that filled me. We were losing ourselves, becoming part of the masquerade. I tried to run, but my legs wouldn't obey. It was as if an invisible force held me in place. The mask tightened further, forcing my mouth into a grimace, my eyes widening in horror as I realized there was no escape. My vision blurred, the room spinning around me as darkness encroached. The last thing I saw was the host's grinning mask, watching as I too joined the ranks of the eternal faces. Say that every so often, a masked figure is seen wandering the old mansion's grounds. Their mask is always frozen in an expression of terror, grief, or silent laughter. They walk aimlessly as if searching for something, or someone. Rumor has it that these figures are the lost souls of the masquerade, bound to the mansion forever, their real faces hidden beneath layers of cursed masks. And sometimes, if you're unlucky enough, you'll receive an invitation. A black envelope with silver lettering, an invitation to join the masquerade of eternal faces. If you do, remember to burn it and never speak of it again. Because if you step into that mansion, if you don the mask they offer you, you may never see your own face again.